And like I think back to it, I followed the typical plan. I went to college, I got a degree in music education, and I began teaching school as both a band director and a science teacher. So I was kind of doing like the science and art thing, and kind of getting to fulfill both of those, which is good for me. But uh, ultimately in the end, it's like, living in the school system and seeing it both from like a public school and a private school perspective, and seeing how it's like literally like dismantling hopes and dreams. And I was completely like unfulfilled there, and I gained a ton of weight. Like I graduated high school at probably 150 pounds. I went to college, picked up 20 or so, and then once I got into my career as a school teacher, I was up to 230, 235, 240, somewhere in there. It jumped right on up, and super depressed about everything. My wife was living in a different city than I was at the time. And so she come in for like half a week and then be gone the other half of the week. So it was like this vicious cycle between like being a newlywed and being single for half the week and then married for half the week a little bit. And it's like learning how to live with each other. All these things were just contributing to a poor lifestyle choices. So I've always been a big fan of the UFC. So I started watching the UFC again, grew up training traditional martial arts. And that's what really got me motivated. I was like, maybe if I like got back on fight weight, that'd be like enough. That would be enough juice to get back in shape, and like maybe I'll compete too. So I dropped 100 pounds, and next thing I knew, like I had my first amateur MMA fight and had a couple of those. I started my personal training, nutrition counseling business at that same time too. And then by the second time the second amateur fight rolled around, I blew my ACL out. And so I had to rebuild my body from scratch, learned a whole bunch of stuff there. But the thing that like sort of killed me in that moment was I'd been taken out of doing what I loved. I'd like burned that entire teaching life to the ground, built my business up, was personal training people, had, full schedule, and then had that injury, and I couldn't like do things the old fashioned way anymore. So that's how I got into online marketing, like the online marketing side of it. And now like that's also another part of the mission, is helping personal trainers, health and fitness coaches, health and wellness coaches create and launch their online business, especially if they get into a jam to where they like cannot physically perform their duty that brings their livelihood in. So that's where I am now. It's been a wild ride.
Wow, dude. How was MMA fighting? How was like getting into it? Like the first. How was the first fight going into the ring, man?
Well, like it's a mixed bag of emotions. Really, on one end, like I'll be the first to admit, it's like you put on the mean face and look a certain way, but it's like I was scared to death too. It was like it was this moment where I was like, okay, so I stopped playing it safe. I stopped teaching school as a band director of all things. And it's like, now I'm going to fight. And like, I had kids that I taught showing up to my fight. And it's like, my whole family's there. And it's like, I can't lose in front of these people, So it was like all this pressure. And the first fight, the fight itself was so fun. I could talk about that for a while, but I'll sum it up real quick. I came out, I kicked him in the ribs, hurt him immediately, but he punched back, and then my vision tripled. And then for like the entire rest of the fight, or entire 2 or 3 weeks after that, I was seeing 3 of everything. So it was like really like one of those pick the ones in the middle moment. But it was, it was a bloody firefight was what that first fight was. But I ended up winning. That, although it didn't look like it. So it was, and like that feeling of like I did it. But it's like as quick as it came, it went away. And that was kind of a scary thing for me too. Like you just won this fight. Like you literally got half naked in front of drunk people just for their entertainment. Is like to win a fist fight, a glorified fist fight in a safe environment, which was cool for me. Like it was a good growing experience. Cause I had things to prove to myself at that moment.
Right.
And then it was like, I had proven it. And it's like I felt this rush of yeah, and then it was like almost like the same feeling you get when you just win a match in an online video game. It's like yeah, and then it's over, and it's like wait, we have to train and do this again. Like I don't know if I could. I don't know if I'm built for this. And then I had a second fight, and the thrill was gone. Like I showed up to the fight, I made weight, did all this stuff, and just fought completely flat, ended up losing a split decision that, I should have won probably, but I mean, it's been years ago now. So it's like water under the bridge. And then the ACL injury happened. And then it became all about like, okay, this affected me, helping people with their health and wellness, which was what the real goal, the real mission was the whole time. It's like, I can't afford to do this to myself. I got to figure out how to put myself back together so my physiology is not fighting against me as I'm trying to help these people. Because, being a health and fitness coach when you're not healthy is one of the most crippling things in the world if you let it. So there was a fight there as well that was going on. That was the real fight. So
Wow, dude. That was a real fight, like inside of you, like in your brain, like trying to, hey, I got something to prove to myself, and then at the same time, like, but if I do that, then that's gonna cause like me not being in a healthy place to be able to like live what I teach, something like this.
yeah, exactly. And I put myself down in that place. And I mean, it's like you wake up from that particular surgery, and it's like if somebody dumped me on the side of the road, I'm dead. It's like that's like the sort of spot that you're in, and within just a few days, my entire leg had withered down to like the size of my bones, pretty much. And rebuilding everything out, I remember like I did have that going on. It's like I'm not healthy, or I can't let like the total fighter thing, like I can't let people see that I'm hurt, even if I am, so it's like I was trying to put on this very stoic face, this very everything's okay. And I was trying to spread this message of health and wellness, and I knew deep down it's like I wasn't healthy. I wasn't like actually practicing what I preached in at that time. So that was a real rededication moment to me, because after the first 6 months, like it also put me in this place of fear. I know I might be all over the place here, but it's all connected. Um, it put me in this place of fear, and it's like, okay, well, if I don't fight now, it's like, how am I going to eventually, like, how am I going to take care of my family? So I started like training hard to get back way too soon. Ended up basically tying my body in certain ways together backwards. So it was like the hips became incredibly tight and pulled in. And it was like I was getting stronger, but stronger in the wrong way, because the posture was all wrong, pushing too hard, doing things too soon. Like they're like, for the first 6 months, it's only straight lines. Like you cannot change directions. You can't cut or pivot any direction. And it's like if I turned, I'd literally have to like do a marching, like turn like this and then walk, because there's like literally no pivoting. But yet, guess what I was doing? Pivoting. Like I was like just I let the obsession with it get to myself, and realized like I had always been doing that all the way back to whenever I was 100 pounds overweight, which was a very like self-love type of thing. Like I hated, like I remember like couldn't look myself in the mirror type of place, where I was like, I don't like who you are for being that weak, for various reasons. Like, look at you, you're 100 pounds overweight, like all the bad things that you could possibly say to yourself for being unhealthy. It was like I was saying, and beating myself up and using that as my actual emotional fuel to push myself through workouts, like 2 and 3 workouts a day, every day, just total overreaching, overtraining, to the point that ultimately led to that injury. So it's like, oh, well, maybe we should learn how to do this right. So that's what I dedicated myself to. And I began helping everybody from MMA fighters stay injury free to the entrepreneurs and CEOs who were doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and MMA class just as a hobby, keeping them healthy and keeping them going, and keeping them lined up in ways that were going to keep them in the gym and keep them performing and living the life they want to. as opposed to sitting on the bench for a few years at a time like I was forced to do. So
Wow, bro. And that's so crazy, man, because like I think a lot of people could have this same experience and then like after a whole career, like the whole it just makes me think of that statistic like 80% of the professional athletes get bankrupt
mhm,
after. So I can't imagine like going through the road and like knowing that that's all you know. Like in a way you had like this other bigger mission
mhm,
underneath it all, so it's like all the stuff got shaken up and that kind of pulls you through it. um and so it's like an amazing way of realizing how you can help other athletes really tie into their deeper mission, because
mhm.
then if something goes wrong with their bodies, it's not like it's not like the end of the world. They can move forward, because I meet so many athletes. I mean, one of them was in Bosnia, soccer, and I mean, he was just devastated after an injury, just completely like there is no meaning to like their whole identity,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Their whole identity gets shaken up, man.
That's exactly what happened to me, and I did not know how to deal with it, you know. So during that time, I mean, it's like so I'm in crisis mode with that and trying everything I can to get back, but realizing at the same time, speaking to your point about bankruptcy and stuff, I was like, I got to figure out a way to make money. It's like here I am, like I was envisioning myself. It's like without without my status as a fighter, like a tough guy or something. It's like without that had been taken away from me. It's like now you're just a loser who trains martial arts uh, while your wife has a real job, and here you are playing patty cakes. You know what I'm saying? Like I started beating myself up like that, and at the same time, I'm like just walking into the online marketing world, discovering things like ClickFunnels and Russell Brunson, trying to build funnels, wanting to know why it's not working, and it's like I had this entire identity crisis thing I had to fix with myself, and that took a very long time. So I have some tricks on that as well. That's where I sort of get into my gamification and understanding why people do the things they do and framing all of my trainings in this process of like it takes the learning process and makes it like a game so people stay engaged throughout it, because that's what I had to do to dig myself out of a hole from a personal development standpoint. It's like I just made a daily game out of it and assigned these points and values and systems and sort of like realized it's like this is why people do things. Like people use this emotion this way, like they're crushed by the emotion of fear whenever they get into inaction, but yet this other person uses this fear as an action signal to just start preparing. And it's like how do you flip that switch? And that's sort of what that all was designed for. So
Huh. That's so cool, man. I was just at there's a psychiatrist who's like pretty big into helping men, young men. He's pretty famous guy, written a bunch of books. For some reason, I can't remember his name right now, but I met him and super cool guy. He'd kill me if he knew I wasn't remembering his name. But all the studies that he did, man, showed that the only way to help young men was through gamification, to make it like a video game almost,
mm-hmm.
because that's the only way that they get engaged. So that's pretty interesting. And I've seen, a couple of the people that we're familiar with, like Garrett's program, Garrett White, and
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a lot of it is very like engaging, like movies and gamification and keeping scores, and it's like the competition. We drive for that as men. So
Yeah,
that's interesting that that's what helped you.
I'm heavily inspired by Garrett White. In fact, that was what hit the way he gamified things made me have some realizations of like what it was that I was doing when I was being successful versus not successful. It was like I understood that like that gamification process was the thing, and I just had no idea how to articulate it. And at the same time, like video games are always a controversial topic, but like I see big like there are problems out there from excess video game use, but there's benefit to it as well. Whenever it's controlled, it like does so much for your problem solving and things like that. And whenever I was down with my injury, like played a lot of video games, a lot of video. I was like I'd rather get addicted to video games than get addicted to painkillers, was my philosophy on it. And it was like the only thing that would take my mind off of the pain of the knee injury sometimes. Like my game's Rainbow Six Siege, by the way, if anybody got a teammate still. But but on a daily basis, I do encounter these, young men and individuals that have been exposed to it too much. And it's like, it's the only place where they're deriving their significance. It's the only place where they're getting certainty and uncertainty and all your other human needs in one spot. And it can lead to some bad things if it's left unchecked. But within that is like I started, after going through reading Garrett White's book, like the Warrior book, I started going through different video games and studying what they were doing, like how they were gamifying these elements and how they were keeping people engaged and keeping them addicted and coming back for more and playing. Because I mean, it's like one of the best. So it's like is like a cheat code to figuring out how human beings work. So I studied that for a long time, and I apply those principles throughout everything. Like whenever I train somebody else physically, or I'm taking them through a change in their nutrition or helping them build their business, it's like it's all the same sort of process that I'm and framework I'm following in my head.
Man, and that's awesome, because I think like we're at a point in like right now, like, okay, like casinos and like gamification and like Facebook and politics, with the big data and using like the way that people work and their psychology, like they're like, I have this debate all the time. It's not debate, but I talk about this all the time because I feel like it's so important for us to stop saying like, hey, this is such a bad thing, and start using it, man. Like,
Right.
And so for me in my industry, like with healthcare, like I need to start learning everything the politicians know, everything the casinos know, so I can help my patients use the same tools to help them, influence them into like them gambling in their own health, like the same, and getting addicted
Yes.
to
Yes.
building their bodies, getting addicted to, you know what I mean? So like we gotta use it, man. The tools are there now. We just gotta bring them over and start deploying them,
Exactly. I used to, speaking of marketing and hooks, I know that's not really the topic today, but one of my hooks that I used in the past was like creating an empowering addiction through addition. It's a bit of a mouthful, but it was a good one.
An empowering addiction through addition.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'd love to have that talk with you sometime.
Exactly, man. Yeah, and I know that your time is very tight today. So thank you so much for joining in, man. And also this is like a primer, because I think we could do a very a good long one. So we'll have to meet again. And so I'm looking forward to learning more about everything, man. So we'll probably have to do another one sometime in a couple months, if that sounds good, man.
Absolutely, man. I had a blast today, and thank you for having me on.
Yeah, for sure, brother. All right, man. So all the best, and take it easy, huh?
All right. Yeah.
And thank you for, all right, man.